Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Maika. Today we are going to be talking about some eyeshadow palettes that I felt didn't really live up to my personal expectations. So these were all disappointing products for me for several reasons. These palettes just didn't live up to what I had hoped when I purchased these. And I'm very well aware that of the palettes that I'm showing you today, some of you watching this may be like your favorite palette ever. Just know that this is my personal opinion. These didn't work for me for whatever reason, but I'm not saying that these are bad. It was just that I had this expectation and these palettes were like down here somewhere, you know? So that's the only thing you need to know about that. And actually what I'm wearing on my eyes today could have been featured in this video, but I already had another palette by the brand in this video, so I didn't want to do overkill. But I just I think about a week ago, I posted a giant review of 10 monochromatic eyeshadow palettes by Colourpop, and this was the Blue Moon that I'm wearing here, and that was my least favorite one of the 10. So that could have made the cut too, but I already had some Colourpop in here and I didn't want to overdo it too much. There were definitely also a few palettes in this video that you may have seen in my eyeshadow palette declutter, and I would like to show those again to you. So let's just get started there. And you will not be surprised if you saw that declutter that I'm featuring in this video. This is the Revolution Pro New Neutral palette, and this is what the palette looks like. This is pretty. It's very stunning in the pen. This is a dupe slash alternative to the Huda Beauty New Nude. It really sort of uses the same layout even. It has a cream over here. There are two glitters over here in the same spot as where Huda Beauty would have put hers. And this is just, it's not bad quality. I mean, Makeup Revolution in general doesn't really have terrible quality by any means. But one gripe that I have had with Makeup Revolution for years is that a lot of their palettes feature either double, like duplicate shades that are just the same, or they feature a lot of shades that muddy together because they are too close together in terms of color story. And that's what's going on in this palette. I felt that every single look I did with this looked identical. There was a difference in depth perhaps, but because the undertones in this palette are just really bland, it didn't really work for me. And now I've also the confirmation why I don't want to own the Huda Beauty New Nude, because apart from these two glitters, you only get a handful of shimmers and everything else is matte. And I prefer a good shimmer on the lid any time of day. So I would still very much like these two glitters to be straight up shimmers, but because they duped it, of course they did the glitters. I have to say that this shade Golden is a stunning shade once it's on your lid. It is just so difficult to take off. So difficult. Like, I would actually, like, the only reason why I would keep this palette around is for that pressed glitter in Golden, because that's very unique. It has a rosy undertone, but then it has like golden sparkles and like even a hint of green in there, which looks really interesting. So maybe I'll try, because this is cardboard, so I can probably quite easily lift it out and like put it in a palette, because I've got some other pressed glitters that I like. So maybe I can keep it that way. That's something new. I didn't realize that. But yeah, the palette overall, the mattes are super blendable and easy to work with. The shimmers are okay. This is not a bad quality palette. It's just in terms of color story, it was too bland and it just muddied together too much. And I wasn't a fan. Another palette that you saw me declutter that I wasn't a fan of is the Royal Affair palette by BH Cosmetics. Not because this is bad quality. This is not, like, these shades work fantastically well. It's just that the color story, like when I looked at this online and also when I look at it now, like, you get 5 rows, or 4 rows I should say, 4 rows of 5 shades. So you get this like neutral with like a pop of pink and berry, you get this green row, you get a very cool tone neutral row, very sort of classic everyday, and then you get this warm tone row. And I didn't really realize that when I sort of bought it. I was certainly drawn in by some of the unique shades that this palette has. This cranberry shade is really nice. That chartreuse is lovely too. It has a really nice taupe here as well. So it has a couple of, an imperial, this like dirty olivey gold, really stunning. So I found myself going, when I started using it, I did a look with each row, and that works really well, actually, I have to say. I think you could even, can you do it like that? I think you could even go top to bottom if you'd like to, with some of these anyways. And it's got a good variety of mattes and shimmers, I found, and all that, and the quality was super nice. It's just that I have these shades, this row, and this row. I just have all of those shades in my collection. And to be quite honest, save for that chartreuse shade, I have all the shades in this row too. So in the end, I just felt that it didn't give me what I wanted it to give me. Like, it just looked a lot more unique in the pictures that I saw online than what I felt it ended up giving me once I started using it. It wasn't until I started using it that I was like, oh, but this is just like boring neutrals with a pop of chartreuse. So I'm actually, again, this is cardboard packaging. I'm still contemplating whether I will take out Crown so that I pull like just a couple of the shades that I really like. This Aristocrat shade, that taupe, I love. Imperial, like perhaps I'll just pull out like 4 or 5 shades from this palette that I like, and then I just put it in a singles palette, because again, there are a few shades in here that I love. I just think that the palette overall is just a bit boring. I was a much bigger fan of the BH Cosmetics Love in London palette. Like, that I loved. That was great. That wasn't only great quality, but those colors also went together a bit better and offered me something much more unique than this does. And then the last palette that you saw me declutter that I wanted to feature here is the Colourpop the Fame palette. This is one that a lot of people love, and it was, I think they did Fame and Fortune, which was in the same sort of style packaging. And then the Fame, this one was the cool toned one, and the Fortune was the warm toned one. And like my gripe with Makeup Revolution, this palette is just bland. This, it doesn't really muddy together. Like, again, Colourpop shadows have great quality overall. Like, they're easy to blend, they are easy to work with, they have stunning shimmers. And what I felt with this palette is that a lot of the shades overlap. So these 3 shimmers, once you put them on the eye, they all look the same. These 3 mattes, once you put them on the eye, they all look the same. These 2 shimmers, no, these 2 are distinct enough. So it was just, you buy a 16 pan palette, but in terms of, again, the looks I got from here with this, like the new neutral by Makeup Revolution, I just felt that every look I did with this looked the same. And then in this darker row, you can see it quite well right now in the viewfinder. This has a bit of a greenish tint, and this looks a bit purpley in the pan. It doesn't translate that way to the eye. To me, this just, like, this shade and this shade could be the same. This shade and this shade are actually quite similar. I felt that the undertones in this are just not outspoken enough for it to really stand out. However, if you're really into cool tones and everyday looks and you want to go for very neutral looks, this is amazing. It's been discontinued, so you can no longer buy it. But this is a really good palette in that sense. It's just that I have palettes that I use for that purpose. Like Urban Decay Naked 2, I would go to over this still till this day if I want to go for a cool tone neutral look. I just do. So for me, I just wanted more variety in the different shades. This is just a really good sign of what most brands seem to think cool tone should be, which is bland and neutral, and I feel that they don't have to be. So that's why, sadly, the Fame by Colourpop didn't live up to my expectations. Then a very recent palette that I tried just a month ago, and I wasn't impressed. I was super excited for this Essence Witchside palette. It has eyes that move. Because this color story, again, it looks really stunning, a little bit more on the cool tone side as well. And it has a couple of super interesting, like, flaky shades. Again, that Huda Beauty New Nude kind of inspiration. And again, I think, even though it was super difficult to work with, I would perhaps try to salvage this Wicked shade here, which is like a taupe with a green sheen. It didn't really show up in the pictures I took with this, but in real life you could definitely see this hint of green over your eye. And I also liked Haunted quite a bit. So there were, like, again, 2 or 3 shades in here that I did really like, but I just felt that A lot of the shimmers in this palette were just incredibly lackluster. They sort of lost their vibrancy like within an hour of wear. The only shade that really performed very well was this navy, which is another one that I would contemplate keeping. But yeah, the rest was just a bit bland. Like, again, that word, bland. I now have three, like, well, all four of these so far I feel are bland and just not as outspoken and distinctive as I'd like them to be. This palette also sort of boasts having like a daytime look and a nighttime look. I used both sides interchangeably, like within the different looks that I did. And again, the quality of this, the mattes in here are really nice and smooth and buttery and all that. It's the shimmers that are lacking, and they just didn't really pull off. But I still would like to try and foil this Wicked shade a bit more to like really, like, if I layer it over their glitter glue, maybe it will stay put a bit better. But this was not the best. And then I also have some like high-end and indie stuff that I did hang on to, because these palettes, like the first three I showed you, I will declutter. I may just take out a few shades, and I think I will be doing the same with this Essence palettes right now, because I don't see myself going back to this entire palette. These are palettes that I have kept around, even though I have sort of my, well, reservations when it comes to these, and these are all indie and high-end things. Let's just talk about this first. This is the Blush Tribe Lila 2. Blush Tribe has sadly gone out of business. I'm not sure if they're still open, so you can no longer get this anyways, but I was super stoked for this because I bought this last year when it released, like straight away, and I hardly ever do that with palettes. I usually sort of wait out to see how everybody's feeling, and then I sort of make a wish list, and then I buy stuff. But I loved their Hasina 2 palette. Loved it. Great quality. And again, there's nothing really wrong with the quality of these shadows. It's just that I found some of these a bit difficult to work with. Some of these have a pretty strong white base, and they just don't really show up very vibrantly once you use them on the eyes. So as bright and as fun as this looks, I felt I didn't get the same amount of brightness. So again, this probably needs layering over a white base or something like that. But I also felt that it wasn't very versatile. So this is a palette that I would say I was disappointed in because it lacked versatility. This is just a bunch of brights and mid-tone greens with a pop of yellow. And that in itself doesn't make this a bad palette. It's just that I would have liked, you know, this shade to be deeper, or maybe that one. Like just a really nice, deep, dark, like foresty green would work really well. And she has said, the owner has said, that this palette was deliberately made this way because there are darker greens in the Hasina too, so that you could slot them together. It's just that I am like, this is just, again, this is why I'm saying this is my personal opinion. I hardly ever reach for more than one palette at the time. I will do so with like singles. I can couple things together because I can easily move them around. But with palettes, I just want to like grab a palette and be able to use it. And with this, I would have to grab them both in order to make them work. And that in itself, it's not a huge deal, of course, but I just felt that as a standalone palette, this didn't work as well as it could have if also some of these like darker shades would have performed perhaps a little bit better. Like this shimmer, like once it's on, it just translates so much lighter once you put it on, and that to me just didn't really work really well. So that's why the Lila 2 I was a bit disappointed in. I just thought that this was going to be a lovely like green color story, still very inspired by the palette, still like how it's got some really unique green shades, so I would still like to use this a bit more, so that's why I didn't declutter it. But this is definitely one that I was a bit about once I started using it. Another indie palette is the Ace Beauté Slice of Paradise palette. I started using this after I had used the Oceanic palette, and I really liked it. But these are just so pigmented. Like this is one of the most fun rainbow palettes on the market right now. I have to say. It's a true rainbow because you do have a red and then an orange, a yellow, and then you get some like pinks, and you get this peach, which is like a neutral that can really tie looks together. And then you have like your pinks and your blues and then your greens at the bottom. So it's a true rainbow, which I really appreciate. I just found that, and it's probably to do with the fact that it's a rainbow palette, that some of these colors didn't really go together very well. So I found it difficult to really create looks. Like you need to stay with these warm tones, you need to stay with the purples and the blues, or the blues and the greens, and like these pinks don't really go with that. Like it didn't really work very well for me. And I had another issue with this. When I used these shades on my lower lash line, they bled. So you know how lipstick can bleed out of your lip line as it wears throughout the day, and this did that with eyeshadow on the lower lash line. So I would end up with this huge smudge going down my eye. Not pretty, not pretty. And I'm not sure whether it's because I don't use primer, but I did, you know, I'm wearing face primer, I'm wearing concealer, I've powdered my concealer. So why does this transfer so much? And it probably has to do with the pigment that's in here. So I felt I could only really use these at the top of my lid, and if I use them anywhere on my waterline, they just start to smudge so badly. It wasn't a good look. So this is why this one didn't really live up to my expectations. But in terms of like a fun, bright eyeshadow palette, this is probably one of the most fun ones in my collection, so I can't get rid of it. And this shade here, Fruit Dove, it's this really nice, gorgeous green shimmer. Like, that's Fruit Dove, that's this shade right here. Like, that's the only reason why I would keep this palette around, just that one shade. Plus, I do have to say that especially that red, passion fruit is really nice, and I like this bright pink in here too. So I can definitely see like individual shades in this palette that I would use again. Same with the Lila too, actually. Like, there's a few shades in these palettes, and I'm like, that's why I keep it around for. Whereas in the other palettes, I feel like I would just rip them out and put them perhaps in a singles palette. Another palette that I was a bit disappointed with, for like very similar reasons as the BH Royal Affair, was the Nabla Secret palette. And I like Nabla as a brand. I think they're, you know, they're pretty solid indie brand from Italy, and they have gorgeous, gorgeous packaging. And when I saw this online, I knew I had to have it. So again, I bought this quite quickly after its release, and then I got it home, and then I found out that Nabla had sort of, let's just say, I wouldn't say photoshopped, but let's just say that they really tried their hardest to make this palette look as interesting as possible. Because it only has, again, like the BH, one row of interesting shades, and that's the shades in the middle. And then it has like golds and browns and a black, and it's got berries and neutrals. But this row is where it's at. So that's why I feel that, yes, this is a stunning palette. I just wish that this was a 5-pan with just that middle row. If they would have done that, like if this would have been one of those like cutie palettes that they do with the 6 shades, that color story, and one of those 6-pan palettes, that I would have, then I would have liked this a lot more. But this was just, to me, a little bit disappointing because it was just a bit bland in terms of like other colors. This quality of the shades is amazing. I was able to pull stunning looks out of it. And I do see merit in the palette as a whole now that I've used it, because even though you get these like really fun like teals and purples and like a brown and like this this looks white, but it's got a green flip, so it's a really interesting duochrome. Especially, let me show you Rosemary, this green shade. Julia Adams MUA did a really stunning look with this, I think on her Instagram. And she pretty much just used this one shade, and it's so stunning. It's like a blackened tealy green, and together with that green matte that you get in here, there's like this teal that is in here, and then that green duochrome, just those 3 shades, that's a look, you know? But I can see merit in this palette because some of these like more neutrally tones do really go very well with some of the more interesting shades that are in here. So as a well-rounded palette that can really do a lot from like day to night and basic looks and having fun pops of color, this does it all. It's just that On the pictures online when I bought this, that's what I based it off, this just looked a lot more interesting than it ended up being. So it's a really good basic palette, I think. Like, it's a good all-rounder, actually. It is one of those palettes that you can just grab and go. You know, if you travel with this, you can do tons of different looks with it, and not a single one will look the same. So it definitely has that going for it. It's just that I had expected more from this color story when I purchased it. Another indie palette, Violet Voss hashtag. And this palette I've kept around because these kind of shades are currently really having a moment. These like yellows and like oranges and purples. It's very much the color story of the Jaclyn Hill and Morphe Volume 2 palette, of course, that I think has some brighter pinks, but then hey, maybe I should just pull this one in, you know what I mean? But this color story is definitely having a moment. And I have to say that the looks I created with this, again, were super stunning. They were really, really awesome. And I like how it's got these like super yellow tones, because I do like some yellows on myself. I like it better than these like orangey warm tones that it has. It's just that for how expensive this was, I did get it on sale, but if you buy this full price, like Violet Voss on Beauty Bay is like every palette is like 50 euros or more. And I feel that you get Morphe quality, but that, you know, that's just me. So you do get like 20 shades, so you do get a good amount of shades, and the palette does feel heavier and better quality than a Morphe palette, I have to say. But the shadows themselves, in terms of quality, I just wasn't very impressed. Like, again, it's not a bad palette. I was able to pull some stunning looks out of it. It works. I really like these purples that are in here. As I mentioned, those yellows. You get 5 mattes at the top. Again, as a concept, as a palette, it works really well. It's just that for how much you pay for this and the quality you get inside, I just felt there was a really big discrepancy, and that's a reason why I have so far not bought anything else from Violet Voss, because I just didn't really feel like it really lived up to my expectations. A very recent palette that you may have seen coming is the ABH Norvina Mini Volume 3. This is a stunning palette. It's really pretty, it's cute, it's curated, it's got really cute cherry packaging, it's got a pressed glitter that nobody told you about. That's the only reason why this was a disappointment for me. It's not on the packaging, it's why I've kept a box. It's nowhere to be found on the website. It just says that this is a pro pigment palette with eyeshadows and pressed pigment for cheeks. That's all it says. And the shade, I think A2 and A3 are the very gritty, shimmery shades. And those are not listed anywhere as potentially not being eye safe or anything like that. It's just nowhere mentioned that they are pressed glitters in this palette. And now that I look at this glitter, this is the exact same kind of shade as the glitter in the Revolution palette. So I don't need to keep that, because this is one that I will keep around, because I really like the looks. Again, I love the looks that I did with this. It's got some really stunning like pinks and berries and reddish shades. Really, really stunning. It has an interesting like pinky duochrome. It's sort of like the pinky version of that cube shade in the Subculture, but like a different, it does have a different texture, of course, a different formula. And these two shimmers are stunning. But please just tell me that you've put pressed glitters into a product so I know what I'm buying. Thank you very much. And last but not least, the last palette I wanted to share with you. Natascha Denona Lila palette. This looks nice and purple on the outside. It's just not very purple on the inside, so that's why I was disappointed in this. Not the quality. Not the quality. I did really like the quality of these shadows. I just thought, like, I bought this one over any of the palettes that were out at that moment because I wanted to try the formula. I wanted to see what the fuss was about. But I also felt that at that moment, like, I didn't really get why this had to cost $129. Like, I still don't. The Natascha Denona Gold palette, which I also own, I do understand. But with this one, I don't get any super interesting textures. I thought that some of the undertones didn't really work very well. What I did appreciate about this is that it starts sort of cool toned, and then you go into the 3 purples that it has. Then we get some berries, and then it goes more like warm tone neutral. And especially this shade here called Dragon Bite. This is like a red with a greenish brown flip, and this shade just takes the cake. That's the standout shade in the palette for me personally. But if you were trying to get this and think that it's a purple palette, it's not a purple palette. And I felt that just in terms of quality, that these were nothing special compared to some like 50 or 60 euro palettes that I also own. I thought it was very comparable to stuff like Anastasia and Urban Decay and all that jazz. So I wasn't really feeling it, and yet I ended up buying the gold, and now I do understand why these shadows are so expensive. But for this one, I feel that it's just a bit... The reason why I'm keeping it around is that Dragon Bite shade that is unique, and I do really like these three purples. They are the three standout shades, and I like these two berries that you get here at the bottom. But this is not a palette that I go into very often to create looks with. I actually keep thinking like, oh yeah, I need to pull this out again, but I'm currently trying out all the palettes that I bought over the winter period. So I'm like doing looks with things continuously. So I first need to go through all of the palettes that I'm currently testing out before I can go back to something old that I would like to get some more use out of. So I hope that by summertime I can go back to this, because I do think it's a very pretty like summer, but also like quite a fall palette with those warm tones that are in here. So I do like the color story in the end. I just wish it was more purple, and I wish that it had better shades that would have really made me understand why this has to be so expensive. So there you have it, that's it. Those are the 10 palettes that I want to feature in this video. I hope I didn't feature one of your absolute favorite palettes. And I know that it may seem a bit weird because some of these I still like this Nabla palette I still think is really good. I still actually looking at it again, I quite like this BH Cosmetics palette. It's just that when I was using it, it was just a bit underwhelming and not that great. So that's why I'm also saying, like, I don't believe that these are bad palettes. These are not bad palettes at all. It's just that they didn't really work for me in the end. And that's why, you know, it's a good thing that we all like different things, I think. And yeah, so let me know in a comment down below what a disappointing product was for you. I would love to know, especially if it's an eyeshadow palette. And without further ado, I would like to thank you very much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, or subscribe to my channel. That would even help me out even more. And then I hope to see you in my next video, which hopefully will be up on Sunday on this channel. So see you then. Bye.